Hi, everybody. David Donaldson here. Unfortunately, I don't have Joe Martin with us. He's going to be out this week, but I do have an associate and somebody I've been around for a while, Michael Tritthart. Michael, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Welcome to Entrepreneurial Impact.
Thank you.
I've been fortunate. I've been in classes with you. I've seen you do some trainings locally in my market centers and from afar, and done some things with you. And it's always fun to reconnect with people that have done similar things in our technological real estate universe.
Right.
But today's conversation isn't about really any of that. People are saying, well, I got Dave and Michael talking. They've got to be talking amazing tech. We're not going to talk about tech at all really today. What happened was we were at family reunion a couple of weeks ago. I guess we're a month removed from that now. For those of you that aren't with Keller Williams, we do a little event, 20,000 strong, called Family Reunion. And there's training, there's education, there's inspirational moments that happen, right? And we were fortunate this year to have the two Robinses, no affiliation, Tony and Mel, but incredible, impactful feelings. But you left there thinking, hey, what would it look like if I taught a class? What would it look like if I talked about the importance of health, mental and physically, mostly physically in the conversation we had, but it'll cover both, for business owners? And that struck a chord with me. I had gone over a little bit of a health journey myself for the last couple of years, and now I'm off the wagon a little bit, so I got to get back on there. But I thought, what a great conversation coming out of that to say, all right, business owners, you're getting your mind right with some education. Let's get your mind right around health. And I'd love to see where that went for you, what you took that, but what inspired you to kind of start going down that course. Before we get to that, give everybody a little bit more background about who you are, what you've done, and why is this important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you letting me come in and share my message. So I've been training business owners, real estate agents since 2001. Joined Keller Williams back in 2004 as the director of tech for an office in Plano, Texas. And then soon thereafter started to travel all over North America, providing lead generation classes, social media marketing, web design, you name it, from a tech point of view. So having to travel to different time zones, different regions, planes, and everything else, I realized health had to be a priority for me. And prior to all of that, I was a middle school and high school teacher and football coach in Texas. Did that for 6 years. Side note, Friday Night Lights, it's a real thing. Did that for 6 years. But every year, almost like clockwork, I would get sick as a dog. Thanksgiving breaks and all the breaks, I would get sick as a dog because I would get it from the kids, and then, it just kind of travels around. And I just thought, that's just the normal way of life, right? I guess, you're just going to have to live this way. And then, we had some kids along the way. And about 2006 and 2007, I just kind of resigned myself to, I guess I'll just add on, the extra 20, 30 pounds. And that's just the dad bod.
The dad bod. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the way of life. And in 2008, I tore my meniscus in my knee, 3 spots, right? Wish it was doing something awesome. It wasn't. I was stepping up on that desk to change a light bulb, and my knee exploded, like 3 pops, 3 gunshots going off. So I go to the local surgeon, never met this guy before in my life, and he's looking at my chart. He's doing this whole thing, kind of looking at me, looking at the chart, and finally he just puts the chart down and says, "Time to lose weight, fat boy," and stared at me for a solid minute without saying a word. And it was one of those uncomfortable, felt like 5 minutes, right? But it was less than a minute where I'm finally looking up at the ceiling going, okay, I get it. I got it, right? Got to lose weight.
Yeah.
So I go home that night, got my knee all packed up in ice. I'm all pouty because he called me fat boy. Sat down on my comfortable chair and I turn on the TV, and the first thing that comes on is a commercial that says, for every pound that you lose, it's 4 pounds of pressure off your knee. And I was like, okay, I'm dense, but I'm not that dense. Somebody is telling me something. And so that night I made a commitment, and, my wife was there, and I'm like, no more blankety blank, blank, blank fast food. I'm done. I'm going cold turkey. This is ridiculous. And so I went cold turkey on fast food, junk food. I told her, I said, my rule is if there's a drive-through, I'm not using it. I'm not going. And this is the part where every lady listening to this call hates this part, because when a guy says, I want to lose weight, we can just think about it and we lose a couple pounds, right? And my wife's like, don't ever tell him how much you lost. And I'm like, no, I'm going to tell him. In 28 days, I lost 25 pounds, right? But during those 28 days, during that first month, I was a complete jerk. And what I found out later is I was going through withdrawals, because it was like heroin withdrawal, because I was addicted to the sugar and the salt and the grease and all the nasty stuff that's in this food. And so I was able to go out and extend that and really limit the fast food, right? And this is kind of a Keller Williams thing, what I did before it was even in the book is I did a 66-day challenge. The one thing comes along a couple years after this. And I started reading the one thing, and I'm like, oh, I already did that. And I just naturally, instinctively did just the fast food part. I didn't cut out the soft drinks at the time.
Okay.
Right? Because if you try to do too many things at once, you multi-fail. I just said, I'm cutting out the fast food, the junk food. I'm building websites, so I'm still pounding down the Coke Zeros like nobody's business, all that other type of stuff. But then I realized after reading the one thing, well, wait a minute, maybe I could go out and do a 66-day challenge to eliminate soft drinks, eliminate certain elements of detrimental health to my business to improve my health. Because if I'm going to travel and train everywhere, I got to be able to do that. As an entrepreneur, I'm the engine, and if the engine is not running, the business is not running, and nothing good is going to happen from that. And so that really started my journey. And then Mel Robbins just really, really drove it home that I need to share my message. I need to create a class about that. And here's my disclaimer. I'm not a health professional. This is my opinions. Go seek professional advice, all that disclaimer stuff that you want to put out there. But as I started to share my story, a lot of people had the same stories. And then when I put that out on Facebook and you saw that, I had a lot of people that really resonated with that, saying, yeah, I would love to hear this. I would love to know more. Because as an entrepreneur, we sometimes get stuck in a rut. And it becomes very difficult to put our health as a priority until it's too late, until you have to deal with major health ailments. And that's
look, you're right. Like, there are things that happen to us because we didn't, and there's things that we can be proactively to prevent them. It's that security mindset. Like, I used to be in the security industry, and the people say, "What do I need this for?" I'm like, "Well, you don't need to know it till you know it. So it's better to be ahead of it." Right.
Exactly.
And we can hear the stories about my granddad who, drank hot fat and ate bacon and smoked cigarettes till he was 99. But yeah, that's 1 in a million.
Exactly.
Right? The older we get, we cross that threshold of whatever age, 40, 50, 60. We recognize that getting up and down a little bit, changing light bulbs a little bit. Yep. For me, it was carrying the Christmas tree out and blowing out my ankle. I had somebody standing over me. They're like, you okay? I'm like, how'd you know? Yeah. They're like, the whole world heard you fall, because apparently I recognized how much it hurt and expressed that dramatically.
Yeah.
Right. So that became a journey for me. It's all well and good to have those moments, but how to be proactive about it, and how has it impacted your productivity, the day-to-day for your businesses, that you can actually attribute to saying, these changes that I've made have made me better, build me stronger. We'll go $6 million man here, but made you better at what you do to run your business on the day-to-day?
So, I'm going to be 52 this year, and I'm in better shape now than I was at 30, than I was at 40. And for me, for years, I was always like, oh, I got to lose weight, so let me work on my diet, but not work out. Oh, okay, let me start working out. And because I'm working out, I can pretty much eat anything I want. So I never put the two together, right? So when I finally started to do strength training, conditioning, basically back to what I did when I played football type stuff, and started, and of course I didn't eat right as a football player because I was an offensive lineman. We just ate everything that was in front of us at that point.
Me too.
And at age 17 and 18, it didn't matter, right? Because, you can just burn that stuff off like nobody's business. But once I started to fine tune all of that, then it really started to make a huge difference. And I started to see the production in my business. And I started to see not even just the physical strength in everything, but the clarity. Got rid of brain fog, because I was not feeding my body with poisons anymore, right? With this type of food that has been given to us here in the Western world. And, and here in the last 2.5 years, my biggest thing that I've been focused on is trying to eliminate seed oils out of my diet. Now, and I'll share this with you too, David. I'll send you the link so you can.
Yeah, we'll post it along with the.
Yeah, it's a doctor doing a TED talk, and he's talking about, hey, there's enriched flour and grain in our food, and there's sugar in our food, and those are all bad. He goes, if there's one thing that you could cut, and you should cut, it should be your seed oils. And the seed oils are like canola oil, safflower, sunflower, anything that's like a seed type of oil in that. And I had never really had anybody share that before. And I'm like, wow, okay, this makes sense. And basically, and I'm summarizing what he said, but he goes, you're eating toxic waste. Because when you eat this oil, this causes inflammation in your body. And he goes through all of his doctorisms and he shows you exactly all of this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who would eat any of this stuff, right? Who would do this? But then once you understand the downside of seed oils, go to your grocery store. It's in 90% of the food that is out there. And I'm like, I'm like an ingredient reader now. And I look, and if it's got oils on there, I'm like, nope. No, like olive oil, that's fine. Some of the oils are fine. Actually, animal fat, has gotten a bad name, gotten a bad rap. Animal fat's good for you in moderation, right? Seed oils rose in the 1900s. Like, as a country, the United States, we were actually pretty fit around 1900, 1910, 1920. Seed oils after World War II took off and has been infused into all our food. And if you look at the obesity rates and the introduction of seed oils into our food, it lines up perfectly with all of that. And so that was like my big aha moment, like, oh my gosh. And so I've tried to eliminate that. Now, the problem is when you go out to eat, it's in everything.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't go 100%. But I will say this, and again, this is my story, and I'm not a doctor, but you'll find seed oils, they're actually in your shampoo, they're in your body wash, they're in your sunscreen. So not only are you eating it, you're putting this toxic waste on your skin.
And you're absorbing it.
You're absorbing it in multiple ways. And so I'm reading every ingredient. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's here. It's there. It's everywhere, right? And so about 7-8 years ago, I had basal and squamous skin cancer, not melanoma, but things that had to be cut off of me, right? I had spots on my face, on my arm, my leg. And I kind of just chalked that up to being a football coach, being fair complected in Texas type of thing. But then I started realizing that, well, the sunscreen has, the seed oils in it. And so I started to eliminate that type of sunscreen. I started to eliminate that type of body wash. I got it out of my food. Like in our house, I don't eat seed oils. Like I can control what I can control. And we have a vacation property in Florida, and I was there this past summer. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a test. And this was my test. I know that I had cut seed oils out. And I was like, I'm going to go out for about 3 or 4 hours at the height of the day, hot sun, with no suntan lotion. White boy going to get burned, right? Is what I thought. And I was like, I've got to trust and test it. I was out there for 4 hours. I didn't get fried like I normally do. I got some sun, but I didn't. And this is a guy with, recovering skin cancer. I was like, let me just test this. And I've not had any spots come back since I've cut out the seed oils. I don't wear that type of suntan lotion anymore. I put on a little bit while I was out there for 4 hours. Again, my story, and I'm not telling everybody to do what I did, but I had to test it. And I didn't get fried like I normally would have. And I had somebody say, well, you're not basting in it like a chicken, like you used to, right? Somebody that's in the health industry. And that was a big eye opener for me. So, if I could share one thing with anybody that has really changed my trajectory here recently, it's the elimination of the seed oils.
Seed oils. It's interesting. Like you hear things that are time, and a lot of that makes sense, right? You got to look at what works for you, certainly. But right, I mean, I'm going to be 52 as well this year. So we've kind of come through a lot of the same things. We think about what we grew up watching. People literally basting themselves out in the sun in the 70s and 80s of the accelerant, essentially, right? So now putting the sunblocks on, I'm very Irish, Scottish, go from white to red in the sun if I'm out there for any sustained period of time and lack movement, right? Where I'm now basically just pasting it on my body, which I know probably couldn't be good either from a sunblock standpoint. But everything within moderation, right?
Yeah.
But you're talking about things at a different level, which is interesting because you're now getting clarity. So you're feeling better, you're looking better, you're acting better, right? Your health is improving. How is that impacting your mindset? Like, what kind of clarity starts to happen for you amongst other things? Are you balancing things differently? Are you accomplishing more? Like, what's that feel like?
Yes. For me, it reduced the stress level because I could feel the improved productivity. I didn't feel like I was like running to try to catch up to everything. It gave me the ability to manage my business, build. I have two businesses, my training business that I am pretty much the sole owner of. I have my assistant, and then I co-own our website and social media design company. My business partner, Jeff Kale, manages all of that. But it gave me the ability to be more in the moment for each one of those businesses because I didn't have to worry about my health. Like I've kind of trained my body and my mind to be in tune with what I need to eat, the fuel, and the mindset of what I need to have that success. Now, I will say this, from a mental health point of view, I think society as a whole has been hit hard, definitely within the last 4 years. Just one thing after another, just boom, 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 boom with stuff. And my wife works in the mental health field, and she can testify to that. They've seen staggering increases of people with mental health breaks. And I think starting down the path of eating right, drinking water, doing the healthy aspects fuels the mental health side of it. Because if you're not feeling good, then you're going to spiral, and your mind's going to go down there with you. And so, I think a big part of this is also getting the mental clarity. I start off every day. I get up. I don't get, and there's people who go, I get up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I'm like, I did that when I was a coach. For 7 days in a row when we were in season. Like, I'm sleeping in. I'm not doing that. I'm going to wake up at 7. Right? You want to get up at 4? Feel free. I did that my whole life in the beginning, playing football and coaching. I'm not doing that anymore. But when I do get up, instead of sitting around watching TV, I don't watch TV. I get up and walk the dogs. That's my mental health break in the morning, is to get outside, get some fresh air, get the dogs out there, exercise them. Then I go out and do my exercise in the morning at the gym. I don't wait to the end of the day. I start by getting the endorphins flowing for the day, and I think that helps give me the mental acuity throughout the day. Because a lot of times, many of us say, well, I'm going to work out in the afternoon. I'm going to work out in the evening after work. You're drained, right? You're a cell phone. Your battery is on 1% by the time the day's over.
You bring up some really great points, and it kind of leads me to like entrepreneurs, business owners, family members, people raising kids. Health is something that we take for granted and we set aside very, very easily for the sake of all of those other things.
You got to be the breadwinner.
You got to be the breadwinner. You got to provide. And there's a lot of single parents out there and all the different things that come around, or just or families that are just outnumbered by kids. You don't have to be a single parent. You can just be outnumbered by kids, right? 3 to 2, 2 to 1, whatever that looks like. You're outnumbered. You're running in multiple different directions. And the things that you're bringing to light are true. And I challenge people's mindset to saying, and this is what I want to ask you, is like, how do you allow for time for that? I think that's where people struggle. We talk a lot in coaching in general, right? For business owners, we talk a lot about what does your calendar look like and what are you setting aside for yourself, is how do people set aside the proper time? How do they find the motivation? Last week's episode was all around motivation. How do they motivate themselves? Because that's the start. You're going to be motivated to make change. 60-day, 6-day challenge sounds amazing, and it is when you do it. But guess what? It doesn't take 66 days to unravel what you've accomplished.
Right. Yeah, I think a big thing too, we've all heard this, you got a time block. Well, I think the biggest thing is you got to time protect. because we can time block, and we can make the pretty calendar color coded, or we can have the daily planner and it's all blocked. But if you don't protect that time, if you don't say, this is my one thing, this is what I'm going to focus on right here, and nothing else is going to interfere with that, then it doesn't matter. You might as well just throw a hand grenade into that calendar for the day, because it's toast. It's over.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I always put on there is I put my health on there. I'm going to the gym. The dogs know my calendar better than me. They know when it's 7 o'clock, it's like, hey, let's go. We're ready to go. It's our walk, whether it's raining, snowing, cold outside, hot outside, whatever the case may be, we're going. And then I think another thing too, especially with the kids, and I made this huge commitment that when my kids were younger, and my daughter right now, she's a junior in high school, my son's off to college, but when they were playing sports, when they had practice, everything else, I was there, right? Even though I travel all across North America, I didn't miss any of my son's high school basketball games. When he was a senior a couple years ago, he wrote me a note. And he said, Dad, I appreciate you being at all my games. I know how hard your schedule is. I know how much you travel. I appreciate you making me a priority. And, that still kind of hits me in the heart a little bit in a good way. Like,
yeah,
you've got to make, as an entrepreneur, you cannot put your family on the back burner. You got to be there in the moment, because that's good mental health for you, but it's good mental health for your kids. And what I tell everybody, and trust me, I fail at this, but I succeed more often than I fail. When you're there at their practices and they're playing soccer, basketball, football, whatever the case may be, you as a parent, be in the moment. Don't think of, entrepreneur, now that he's at practice or she's at practice, now I have time to check my email and my text. Let me sit over here on my phone and play on everything. And then you miss your kid making their first 3-point shot or making their first goal in a practice. They look over at you and you're down on your phone and you're like, oh, yeah, I saw it. Put your phone up. Put your phone up. Be in the moment for your kids, because it's going to matter more to them.
You know what's funny? They notice. Like you said, you got the letter, but I know how many games and practices I've been to. I know the countless hours that I've been. But at the same time, even with all that, I've absolutely been called out by my son. You weren't watching.
Oh, yeah.
I looked up. You were on your phone. They notice.
Couple years ago, our niece was going through some marital troubles, and so she stayed with us, and she had a 2-year-old son. And this kid was the smartest 2-year-old that I've ever seen in my life, right? I even kind of joked with my wife. I'm like, he's smarter than our kids. It's like, these kids sharp. And whenever he was doing something and mom was not watching, he'd come over and kind of like, not hit her, but kind of, smack her leg and go, look at me. Look at me.
Yeah.
And so it kind of became the inside joke within the family. It's like whenever we want to get attention from the family members, it's like, hey, look at me, right? But he knew. He's like, you need to see me. You need to hear me. Put the phone down. Pay attention to me. And he was right.
All those things come into play, right? Paying attention to them. And this started off paying attention to yourself, not being in front of the TV, not watching the TikTok videos, not being immersed in email, right? Something I personally started because I used to get up very early for different careers. And I used to run restaurants. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, something small as I did a cosmetic change in my house. We took our blinds down. We were waiting for new blinds and new draperies, and we painted. But when we put them back up, what I started doing is I started waking up with the sun and stopped drawing the blinds. So now my curtains are always open in my room. And it took a little bit of time, but now I'll wake up naturally with the sun. And winters were always challenging for me because of just dark and being winter. But even though I wake up in the dark now with the windows open, I had gotten so accustomed to basically waking up really no later than between 5:45 and 6:15 that it wasn't waking up with the alarm. It wasn't being overly tired. It was naturally rising. And at the same time, so if I'm naturally rising at that time, I'm naturally falling asleep by 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. So
natural rhythm.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And that was something I accidentally stumbled upon, but made a huge impact because now I'm awake. I'm like, well, I'm in bed. I might as well get up. So I get on the treadmill or I hit the bike or I go for a walk. Right? I don't like to be too cold. You're in Texas. I'm on the East Coast. It gets a little chilly still, right?
Yeah.
But now you've got that extra 45 minutes, hour before I got to get the kids up. It helps the kids are getting a little older that they get up on themselves. So I've got my free time. But there's a lot to be done. You don't have to get up at 4 a.m. There's a lot that you can do between 6 and 8.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, for a lot of people too, the mental health aspect, I've got a lot of friends that say, you know what, I get up and I meditate. I do yoga. I read scripture. I get my mind right for the day, right? That's my health that I need. And there's not one way. There's not, you know, the right way. It's your way. Whatever you need to feed the mind, to feed the body, to feed the soul. I think that's what people have to find. And I've just come to this point where it's like I'm not relying on the media to tell me how to think or how to believe or the government or anything.
You want to save yourself some time in television. Don't watch the news because it ain't the news.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I tell people this, hey, let's break down the word television, right? Television. Let's shorten that up. It's tell a vision, right? It's not share the facts. It's tell a vision, whatever we want to tell you. And that was one thing too, when COVID hit and we were all kind of in the lockdown mode. We're sitting here watching the news, and we would always, my wife and I, we would always turn on the local news, you know, Fox News for Dallas, and that was just something we would listen to in the background while we're getting ready for the day or whatever else. And one day I just was sitting there and I'm go, they're lying to us. They're not telling us the truth. And we haven't watched mainstream media news since March of 2020. And I'm going to be honest with you, my mental health, 1,000 times better. Yeah. Since it's garbage in, garbage out type of situation. And so that has been another mental health check for us that we could say has really made a major improvement.
You know, if there's one thing I've kind of taken away from this conversation, and I've kind of realized it, and I look back at some of my, a lot of things that you're discovering were self-discovery. I mean, sure, we pay attention, we look at things, and we ask questions. But a lot of the things that you're experiencing and things that I shared were on our own, and recognizing, hey, this made me feel good. Not feel good in any other like extracurricular time, other than it made me feel better internally. It made me feel better mentally. Let me do more of that. But it's the recognition that brought that to you. And now you're taking advantage of that.
The recognition. And then I'm a former history teacher, so I'm all about the research, right? So I'm like, let me go research this. I've heard about this. Let me go verify this for myself, right? And again, I'm going to nerd out for a little bit on history. One of the class, I'm going to teach a health class, but I kind of joke, and it's kind of joke, but not joke. I'm going to teach a class about the 10 things that happened in World War II that still affect us today, right? And still affect the way we live. And one of those is in World War II, the Canadian military, they were using to lubricate their machines, their tanks and their armored carriers and everything else. They had found this plant called the rape plant, R-A-P-E. Sounds horrible, right? And they found that they could get the seed, the rape seed. They could squeeze oil out of the rape seed, and it would become engine lubricant for all of their machinery. So they had massive quantities after World War II of all of this rapeseed, all of this oil that they had created. And they're like, well, what are we going to do with this? Well, what they did in the 60s is they contacted the FDA in Washington, D.C., and I can cite these sources and I'll give it to you. And then they said, well, we're going to fund a new study for you. We're going to give you $60-something million for this new study. Can you help us with this rapeseed? And giving you the short version of it, basically the rapeseed has now been renamed canola oil, and the FDA has approved canola oil to be put into all of our foods. So canola oil technically was engine lubricant in World War II. Nobody's going to go to an automotive store, grab a can of oil and start drinking it, but yet we're going to find canola oil in a lot of our foods and a lot of our shampoos and everything else that's out there.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the craziness. And so when I see stuff like that, I'm like, again, as a history teacher, I never knew that. Nobody told me that history. Like, where the heck did that come from? And so that's been part of my self-discovery, is to find the real, quote unquote, the real answers, the true answers that are out there. And I've got some people that are holistic, that are kind of like Eastern medicine. 20 years ago, I'm going, oh, those are the kooks, those are the quacks, right? That, who are these weirdos, right? That are all focused on that. And now I've come to learn, hey, you know what? They're actually quite right. There's a lot of natural remedies out there that can make our life a whole lot better if we just start to eliminate all of the other things that we have just become accustomed to here in Western civilization.
Well, we say a lot of times, and that's just been used a lot, we say stay in curiosity. But we're not just talking about what people are saying. We're talking about in all aspects of life. And that's exactly what you're trying to drive through here. Look, stay in curiosity. Ask why. See what's working for you. What makes you feel good. Understand that Coca-Cola and canola oil came from somewhere else and are used for multiple myriads in the mechanical world. So it makes sense for us to be ingesting those things.
Yeah. I mean, if you have some corrosion on the if you have some corrosion on your car battery, I've seen that before. You just pour a little Coca-Cola on it, get a little wire brush, and that gets rid of that. And this is what people drink. I'm like, wait, what? And so, that is, and you mentioned it, staying in curiosity. For a long time, I wasn't. I'd put the blinders on, right? Because I was so focused on my business. I was so focused on raising the family and being that provider that I got out of staying in curiosity. And I think now that, we get a little bit older, we get a little bit more wisdom, I think. Now that has kind of reawakened in me. And I ask questions. And I ask, why does that happen? Why are we doing this? And I think that's been a big part of my health journey as well, too. I've taken ownership. Instead of relying on somebody to tell me what to do, I'm going to go out and research that and determine what's best for me. I'm going to ask for advice from people that I trust, that I know, like, and trust, but I'm also going to take ownership of that. And I think that, for me, has been a huge difference.
I think we have a real opportunity here too. Like, we came through a lot of that. There's a lot of joke that happens of, I survived the 70s or I survived the 80s. Well, sure, we get that. We survived lawn darts. We survived basting in the sun by putting accelerant on ourselves. Doesn't mean it was right. Yes, we got through, and we have to deal with that to some degree now. But at the same time, and again, I'll look at this because you're similar. You just have the son go off to college and your daughter's a junior. I've got a son that's about to graduate high school and another one's about to go into high school. Incredibly top forms of their peak conditions, right? For that side. Yeah. And they can eat and process just about anything. But what they see me do, they see me get up. They see me eat a little bit better. And they notice when I'm reading more or doing different things. And having the conversation, though, about why and what I've learned has allowed me to have different conversations with my kids. Right? Oh, yeah. And saying, this is why I'm doing this now. This is why you haven't seen me do in the past. And I want you to not have to have that gap like I did, to fall apart and then have to put myself back together.
That's right. And I've had the same conversation with my son. He's 21. I remember at 21 what I was eating and drinking and not working out. Uh-huh. He is super focused on it. He's in better shape than he was, a year ago. Like, he has really put that focus on him. Very proud of him. Very proud of my daughter. Like, they're learning from our mistakes, because I'm willing to have that conversation with them and to share the successes and the failures. And hey, I'm not your dad right now. I'm giving you some coaching advice. I'm going to say, here's what happens. We're always going to lose to Father Time. Father Time's going to get you at some point, yep. Right? But it's the quality of life that you have.
But I'll challenge you to say it's a little different thing. Is that you're not just willing to have a conversation, but you've made yourself available to have a conversation.
Exactly. And it's like, I'm willing to share, the good and the bad and the ugly, and make sure that you guys have full information to make the choices that you want to make.
Well, listen, Michael, I appreciate you having here today. Like I said, those that know you and know me know that this is a little bit off kilter to a degree but I think it was an important conversation. Sure. So I look forward to hearing more about the classes and keep the conversation going forward. And hopefully today, everybody at home, stay in curiosity. Ask why. And remember, it's as simple as just time blocking and doing something new today and building upon that over the next 60 days, 90 days, 180 days for you. So, Michael, on behalf of Joe and myself, although he's not here today, we appreciate having you, and we'll have you on again. And maybe we'll have a different tech topic next time. But for everybody at home,
I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on Entrepreneurial Impact.